And welcome back to another episode of Why We're Fans. It's your hosts, as always, Gennaro and Duran. Duran, how's it going today, boss?
Good man. We finally got real football back on TV.
That's right. Week one is down. Week two is about to start. By the time we're next out, it looks like the Eagles and Vikings have already played. Got my money on the Vikings with an upset, but
Oh,
won't cross my fingers.
no, that ain't happening.
Yeah,
Don't make
probably
it
it's
too
not gonna.
easy.
It's probably not gonna happen. But hey, I mean, I could wish. But yeah, without further ado, we brought on a 49ers fan with us today. We got Mr. Jordan Elliott. Jordan,
Jordan,
how's it
welcome
going
to the
today,
show.
boss?
It's going great, man. It's a good start to the season. It's about as good a start to the season as I can remember. It's always nice to start on the right foot and feel good about things. And even though the team's been really good the last couple of years, they definitely stumbled out of the gate a little bit. So it's nice to see that that's hopefully a thing of the past now.
Yeah, we all remember last year's week one where it was a monsoon, so it was pretty good playing some good football weather. At an opposing team and give it to them, as they say.
Started off hot, man.
Oh yeah, hope we
Looking
can
good on
keep
both
rolling.
sides of the ball.
Yeah, so before we get started, go ahead and let everybody know what type of work you do, anything that you're working on, give yourself a little publicity at the moment, be your hype man.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a digital editor at NBC Sports Bay Area. So I cover the six regional sports teams here. So it's 49ers, Giants, A's, Sharks, Kings, and Warriors. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do is just, whatever news or content or things that are going on there. I work with a wonderful team there, just trying to do our best to cover it, get a lot of good content out there, and hopefully keep people in the Northern California Bay Area region as up to date as possible with their favorite teams across all sports.
Busy
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, you definitely are. I mean, I follow that, for sure when it comes to the 49ers. I'm not a Giants fans, but my mom and dad are, so I follow a lot of that when I go to their house. I'll go enjoy the game with them, just America pastime with the old man, that's something I like to do. So yeah, we follow a lot of the, NBC sports for sure. So thank you for your work, man. You're killing it.
I appreciate it. I'll be honest, it's as much as I love the 49ers, it's nice to have a break from just football all the time. As much as I love the sport, it's nice to work on baseball for a change or hockey or something else every once in a while. It keeps me on my toes a little bit.
Yeah, definitely both teams for now because we don't know when it's going to be the Las Vegas Oakland or Las Vegas
Mhm.
A's or if they're going to
Hmm.
change their name, we don't know. So we'll see. All right, Duran, you got anything else before we get started?
No, I'm ready to dig in.
All right, so Jordan, me, Duran, and everybody else watching, shout out to the subscribers. We want to know, how did it all begin? How did the fandom of the 40 for the 49ers start?
Yeah, so I was born into it. It was just something that was a way of life in my family. My dad had season tickets at Candlestick from the early 80s until they closed the stadium in 2013. Um, my mom was a huge 49ers fan as well. She still is, but she lives in, another state now. It's harder to follow the games every week, but once upon a time, she was probably the biggest 49ers fan in the family. So it definitely was something that I came by. Honestly, I spent a lot of Sundays growing up at Candlestick with my dad. I'm 28, so I was born like 6 months after their last Super Bowl. So a lot of the games I went to growing up was the, Dennis Erickson, uh, you know, Mike Nolan era where it just, it wasn't the prettiest product, for being honest, right? It wasn't a very aesthetically pleasing football team on the field, but it's shaped some of my happiest football memories, and it created a sense of loyalty and pride that I have in being a 49ers fan now that they are successful, because I remember what it was like on the other side of the coin. So I would say definitely going to Candlestick when I was a kid is what really made me fall in love with the sport and fall in love with the 49ers. You hear all these stories from people that, my dad's age, maybe a little bit older, about the glory days in Montana and Rice and how great all those teams were with Bill Walsh and Seifert. And, it was something that it just came very naturally to me, where I just felt at home whenever I was there. I drive to San Francisco for work, and every day when I drive by that spot where Candlestick used to be, I still choke up a little bit driving by some days where I'm like, damn, I really miss that place, man. There was something so special about it.
Mm.
And that's, I would say that's definitely like the origins for me, is just being able to experience what football was like there. Even when the team wasn't very good, it still holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, definitely. I remember Candlestick as well. Actually, that's kind of what I'm drinking right now, Candlestick Chronicles. Um, yeah, it was a hassle to get out of, but honestly, being inside that stadium, you felt something different. Like I've been to Levi Stadium now, but there's something about Candlestick, man. Like you were saying, the glory days, and my dad still to this day says that Joe Montana is the best quarterback, and he may be, but like in my opinion, I'm gonna say Steve Young, even though I saw like toward like after his glory days, which is fine. I saw Arnez Williams knock him out, whatever. Um, yeah, man, something about Candlestick, man. I don't even care if they played on baseball dirt. That's something about seeing the 49ers play there was something special.
Yeah, it had an allure to it where, there's, you even hear players that weren't playing. Like I remember Chris Long, who was on the Eagles, Pats, Rams for a while. He has
Hmm.
a great podcast out now. Somebody
Yeah.
asked him a few years ago like where his favorite place to play was, and he said it was Candlestick. And I thought
Uh,
that was pretty telling because he won Super Bowls with some pretty
Mhm.
prestigious franchises, played all over the place in the league, but he was one of those guys where even from this modern era, there was something about that place. To me, it kind of embodied what football is about. You'd go there, it's cold as hell, it's windy, it's like, it's not, I don't think it was a dump, but it definitely wasn't this like super nice stadium with all these amenities and all that. It felt like this gritty, setting for football, which to me only amplified it even more, where it's like this feels like where I should be watching a football game. And Levi's is nice, but it also, Levi's feels like a place you go to, also watch a concert or something. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
they built it for that reason. But Candlestick, just, it really felt like this like nitty gritty place where like even when the 49ers were bad, you felt like they had a slight advantage having teams come in and have to deal with that wind and that wet cold and that just, that the mystique of playing on that like hollowed ground there.
It
Yeah, it
had
was.
character.
Yeah, it was kickers and punters nightmare from what I remember people saying.
Jordan, how many generations of Niner fans do we have in the family? I know you said your mom and dad. Does it go back to grandma, grandpa, anyone younger than you?
So my grandparents on both sides aren't from the Bay Area originally. Funny enough, my grandpa on my mom's side moved up here from LA, mid '60s, I think they came up here from LA, and he used to, part of his work, he did a lot of work with the Raiders, so he actually went to a lot of Raiders games. When he was first living in the Bay Area. I don't think he ever really was like a Raiders fan in that sense. It was more so just something that he was associated with work, and would go to the games here and there. And then my dad's side of the family is from Seattle, funny enough, but they came down before the Seahawks even
Mm.
existed. So it really kind of started with the generation before me, just more so as a result of them kind of being the first generation to really be in the Bay Area for an extended period of time.
Nice. Do you remember your first like article of 49ers like merchandise, I'd say, or so some swag, like whether it was a jersey or whatnot, or
Yeah, so I have, like there's pictures of me as like an infant in like 49er stuff, right? So I don't know if
Mhm.
like you'd count that. I would say probably my favorite is, I still have to this day. It was extremely oversized when I first had it, but now it fits probably just about right, even if it's a little small. And it's one of those old school starter jackets from
Hell
the
yeah.
80s. There's a picture of me and my dad where he has one and I have one, and I'm probably like 3 or 4 years old at Candlestick. And like I said, dude, it's way too big for me. It's huge, but it was meant to keep me warm on a day we were there when it was super cold. That's probably my most prized one that was early on. The first jersey I ever had that was a Niners jersey was a road Terrell Owens jersey. T.O. is still one of my favorite football players of all time. Again, when I was watching the team, Jeff Garcia, T.O., Julian Peterson, like those guys were, they were the reason you were tuning in to watch. So that always hold a special place in my heart. And then I remember one of the first jerseys I got that I like kept for an extended period of time was a Patrick Willis jersey I got like a month after he was drafted, because I was like 12 at the time, I think. But I'd seen him play. I was a big college football fan at the time. I was really excited about the pick. And he ended up being my favorite football player. I don't know if you can see it, but this is actually a signed picture of him up here that I keep on my desk here where I work.
That's what's up.
He's just the epitome of class, right? Like on and off the field. I actually had the pleasure. I covered the 49ers Cowboys game this past year, and I met Patrick Willis in the press box, and I, just
Nice.
didn't want to bother the guy, but when we were sitting there talking, I was like, hey man, like, dude, when I grew up, like, you were the man, like, you were the fucking greatest football player I'd ever seen, like, nothing but respect. And it was one of those situations, when people tell you, like, don't meet your heroes, like, you'll be let down. If your hero is Patrick Willis, you will not be let down, I promise.
No.
He was the kindest guy ever, just an incredible football player, but an even more incredible human being. So can't say enough good things about Patrick Willis. He was awesome. And I still have one of his jerseys from like high school somewhere in my closet floating around.
Yeah. Pat P, man. He was very, very, very cool to meet as well. I ran into him just walking in the streets of San Jose one time. I was leaving Gold's Gym there. Humble brag. But then he was walking in and I was just like, I think he kind of knew that I recognized him. And I was like, just kind of gave him a nod. And he's like, hey, what's up, man? I was like, I just say, man, big fan. He goes, thanks, man. Appreciate you. And he wasn't like, don't talk to me, this, and that. He asked me if I wanted a picture, and I was too scared. I was like, no, I'm good, man. I just want to say hi to you, man. I'm a big fan of yours. Thanks for killing it for my Niners, man. Appreciate you. And he was cool about it. It's a cool dude. Him and actually Navarro Bowman was actually really, really cool.
Retired too early, unfortunately.
Yeah, him, Chris Moreland.
Chris Portland way too early.
Way too early.
Jordan, what's your game day setup looking like? Do you have multiple TVs going? Are you a live tweeter? Do you watch it with some friends?
So now my game day setup, humble brag here. I'm very lucky. My game day setup's awesome because I work in the NBC studios on game days now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's about 15 TVs in my immediate vicinity. I have one at my desk, right next to my desk, just past my desk. I got the Niners game on one. I got Red Zone on the other. I'm very fortunate that I'm in a position where that's my setup now. But before, I'll be honest, I like to watch football games by myself. I'll go watch with my dad maybe once in a while just because, I love spending time with him. Or, if it works out where I can hang out with some friends here or there. But I really like to, kind of sit there, take my notes, really lock in on what's happening. And I'll be honest, when, there's a game that's really tight or, things are kind of close, even if the Niners aren't playing, this is just football in general. I'm like the guy that like paces around his living room nonstop. Like I can't sit still. Like even watching like Jets Bills the other night, right? Like I'm that person where I can't just sit on my couch and like zone out. Like I'm fucking pacing back and forth waiting to find out what happens. But yeah, I do that. In my role now, I don't really need to do 49ers coverage the way I did before when I was at SB Nation. But when I was there, I would live tweet things and I would do it honestly in a way to like keep notes for myself to come back to, like, great route by Ayuk on this play. And then when I would get the game film later that night or the next morning, I could go back to my tweet and remember kind of ballpark where it was. But yeah, I would say if I had my ideal scenario, it would be a place where I could watch by myself with ample room to pace around nervously when the game gets tight.
Without being judged.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, easier to follow fantasy football. I don't know if you play fantasy football at all. So, I mean, with all those TVs, man, you can follow every single player you got.
I do, and my teams were an absolute disaster. I can't remember ever having a worse week one. And like I had a good team on paper. Like I've been playing fantasy football for 15 years. I'm not as into it as I used to be completely honest, but I noticed just league wide, it seemed like scoring was really down this past week, just in general. A few guys had huge games that maybe changed it for a couple teams, but I can't remember a time looking like at a 12-team league and seeing so many scores that were as low as they were. So it made me feel a little bit better, but yeah, dude, I'm hoping next week isn't as bad because it was really brutal.
I think 90% of the people feel you on that, unless you had Tua or Ayuk.
Yeah, so I had Ayuk, but I had him on my bench.
Come on.
I don't know. Funny
enough, I never draft Niners players under Kyle because I just don't trust the week-to-week workload because there's just so much variance.
Too many weapons.
maybe it changes. And like, Debo had that great year. Kittle's had a couple of really good years, but it's just, to me, it's not worth like, if the value's there, like, yeah, you take it. But I don't go in planning, like, even CMC, I wasn't in a position to draft him. He was gone by the time I picked in both the leagues I'm doing this year, but I wouldn't have felt great about it just because I don't trust that like volume week to week, which is funny because they're such a good offense. It seems kind of stupid to say like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't want any players from them, but I just feel like it's such boom or bust. Like you're really stuck week to week if those guys don't perform. So
Yeah.
they're not even perform if they just don't get the ball. Like these guys are all
Mm-hmm.
performing. There's just only one football to go around. That was a poor way of wording it. My apologies.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, honestly, like if we're going by stats, it's super hard to
Mm-hmm.
guess which one's which. I mean, like for instance, on the defensive side, I mean, Armstead is killing it, but he's not going to show up on the stat book, but he's the one that really causes like the Drake Jackson sacks and whatnot because he's taking up so much attention. They're stunting and whatnot, but that doesn't get shown up. But he's killing it. So you can't. PFF doesn't even give him a good grade, and I was like, damn, that sucks. But
Yeah,
whatever.
that's the way it goes. Jordan, I assume you've been to training camp.
Yes.
I always ask this question because I feel like training camp is where you really get to get close to the players and see them right in front of you. But last year I went to a Niners game and I got to sit pretty close. And Eric Armstead, G just brought him up, was one of the most impressive players I've ever seen in person. Does anyone stand out to you that you've seen up close?
Yeah, absolutely. Trent Williams is
Oh,
the
yeah.
most freakish athlete I've ever seen. And I mean that
Mm-hmm.
is like the utmost compliment. I've never
Yep.
seen a human being that big, that powerful, that agile. He's just a freak of nature in every sense of the word. And I think it's been so cool to see him play arguably, it's really hard to say because there was a lot of great left tackles before I was watching football. So I don't like saying ever in that sense, but
Mm-hmm.
I think in the 20 some odd years I've been watching, I can't remember a left tackle that's played at the level that he's been at the last couple of years. So it's been an absolute blessing. And then just from a pure like just size standpoint, Javon Kinlaw, dude, is just massive. So like I'm
Mm-hmm.
6'2" myself. Like I'm not, like super tall or anything, but I'm pretty tall. Like I rarely feel like dwarfed standing next to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. And when I covered a couple practices this year and just standing 4 or 5 feet away from him when I'm on the field getting my video and stuff, it's like incredible how small I felt next to him. I'm like, dude, this is wild. Because again, I'm not like massive, but I'm not a small, dude by any means. And to make me feel like I'm like 5'5" because he's just this mountain of a man. He definitely passes that whole the get off the bus test that people used to
Mm-hmm.
always talk about.
Yeah.
I would say those are the two guys for me where I'm just like everybody's big in the NFL. All these guys are huge, and they're in like their own tier above everybody else. It feels like.
He's also ripped too.
Yeah.
He's not like just a big guy. He's fucking ripped.
He's 6'5", 300 pounds with a six pack, dude. Like
Jesus.
it defies logic, but. And he looked really good on Sunday. I'm a big believer in him. I will never sell my Javon Kinlaw stocks, and I'm hoping that
Contract season, right? Contract year.
He looked. I thought he looked really good.
Yeah.
Really good on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah. I remember there was a play where he just blew right through the guard. And I think he went by so fast that he kind of like stopped because maybe thought it was a screen. But I was just like, what are you doing? Like, just get the quarterback. That's your job.
Tossed that dude aside too. Like
Yeah.
he like just completely discarded him. I don't even know if it was a club move. It looked like it was just pure like grabbed him by the shoulder pads and tossed him to the side. So
Yeah.
arrows trending up. It's good to see.
Yeah. Homie just needs to stay healthy. I mean, I was nervous. I told Duran this just because I was a huge Buckner fan. I loved him. Still do. I always bragged about him, always loved the guy. Sucked. It really, really hurt to see him leave, but I just didn't like the whole like, all right, we're shipping him out to bring this guy in, and I was just, all right, dude, you got to show it to me because you're the number one thing on your draft sheet says that you have like deteriorating knees. So
Yeah.
prove me wrong. And so far, what I'm seeing this off season is just him and Drake Jackson actually worked out together a lot, so that's good to see, and it's showing. That's good good to see not only on paper and what I'm reading, but see it live. It's good to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my last question for how it all started. You got anything else?
Um, Not really, because I think the next question I have can tie into I think his favorite player, what he already mentioned.
Yeah, I think he leaked it.
Yeah, so me and Duran, we usually like go on. We usually go like have a little bet when we have a whiteboard what we did of who gets the most right. Duran, was that going to be your guess?
Um, I probably would have went with. I could see me guessing Patrick Willis, but he said T.O. I think T.O.'s his man.
Honestly, I was gonna say like somebody like not random, but during like the glory days, and I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna say like Isaac Sopoaga or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Because he was like a fan
Yeah.
favorite. Like I hated when they had him at D end in the beginning of his career when he moved to inside. I was like, dude, this ooze can play.
that's
Lives in the
why I
house, or like
that's why I
Justin
would go
Smith.
with that's why I'd go with Patrick Willis. He's a lifelong Niner, never gave the fans a headache, always showed up, and like you said, he's a great guy. T.O. on the other hand, bounced around, kind of gave each team a headache. So I probably would have went with Patrick Willis.
Yeah. Is that your favorite 49er of all time?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's Patrick
Yeah.
Willis.
There you go.
So I got a question. I'm just curious.
Hmm?
Would you go prime Pat P or Fred Warner?
It's like it feels sacrilegious to say this because I hold Patrick Willis in such high regard. And I also think that at his peak, he could do a lot of the things that Warner's doing now. And he was athletic enough, I think, to if he needed to adapt his body in a way to be a little bit more versatile in coverage and some of the things we're seeing with Warner, I think he absolutely could
Mm-hmm.
have done it. But that's all hypothetical, and Warner is doing it. And as good as Patrick Willis is and was, and I think that he's up there with Ray Lewis and any other linebacker you want to throw out from the last 25 years, Bobby Wagner, all those guys are in Luke Kuechly are in a tier where I
Mm-hmm.
think you could make a case for any of them. And I think they're all elite at the highest level. But Warner is doing things where there is no comparisons. Like I could take things that like Kuechly and Lewis and Willis all did, and it's very similar. They were all doing a lot of the same things at a very high level. I have never seen a linebacker play the way that Fred Warner plays the game of football and completely erase not only tight ends and running backs, but legitimate number one wide receivers on opposing teams.
Mm.
That game he played against Dallas in the divisional round last year, where he was literally on an island with CeeDee Lamb, who's a legitimate wide receiver one in this league, a superstar wide receiver, and he completely wiped him out on a number of occasions. So like honestly, like maybe it's just recency bias. And again, like I have a picture that's signed by Patrick Willis behind me. Like he's number one for me. But if we're removing my own bias and my own childhood growing up watching him, I honestly probably would take Fred Warner at his peak just because of what he could do. And it feels
Mm-hmm.
crazy to say that, but I think it's warranted. And he's done it year after year after year. It wasn't just this 1 year fluke where we saw it, oh, okay, maybe he'll regress a little bit. No, dude, it's been 3.5 years now where he's looked legitimately like the best linebacker in football.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think it's recency bias. You mentioned a couple guys, Patrick Willis and Ray Lewis. I think Patrick Willis is the guy that he would have an easier time in today's football than Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis was more of like a downhill thumper. I
Yeah.
think Patrick Willis would be fine in today's game, but of course, Fred Warner, man, he's legit. And not only can he do all that stuff in coverage, but he can tackle like a madman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'll be honest, I try really hard to like not compare eras too much because
Mm-hmm.
it becomes really difficult to the game changes so much, right? And you can talk you can talk about things that certain guys do, but there's also things that maybe they weren't asked to do that they possibly could have done. If you put Jerry Rice in the NFL now, like I don't think Jerry Rice is any less talented if you put him in a league now, right? Like if you put a defensive back in today's game 30 years ago, maybe maybe like so the superstars always translate, right? Like if you put
Mhm.
Deion Sanders in any era of the NFL, he's going to be a shutdown corner. He's one of the
Mm-hmm.
best players to play the game. But if you're talking about like like a Charvarius Ward, right? Like Charvarius Ward's a very good cornerback in today's NFL. He's shown he can lock down number one options. I don't think there were as many Charvarius Ward caliber corners in the NFL 30 years ago compared to now. And I don't think that's exclusive to the NFL. I think that athletes in general have just become more athletic with the advancement in sports science, training, the amount of money these guys are making. They can invest more in their bodies. So it's really hard because you can sit here and like, like again, I would never disrespect Jerry Rice and be like, oh, Jerry Rice is only good because the corners weren't that good back then. Like Jerry Rice's game would translate. But if we're talking about like the average NFL players who aren't these outlier superstars, I think that's where it gets really hard because a lot of these guys were comparing era to era, racked up those numbers on these league average players who I think that's where there's too much variance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Doritos or the Tostitos commercial. I think Jerry Rice can still come back and play.
He probably could. Honestly, T.O. looks like he could play right now.
Yep.
T.O. looks like he could. He's like 50, I think now. He looks like he can still play. Chad Ochocinco looks like he could still go out there and run routes. Like some of these guys, I don't doubt it for a second that they could step right back on that field and cook the way they did before.
Hell, we just saw Pac-Man Jones run a 4.5 40, and he's like 38 years old. It's like, what the hell? And all he does is eat snacks and shit. And he's like, yeah, all I do is drink Red Bull and eat Nerd Rope, just nothing. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he's not he admits that he's not lifting weights or anything like that, but he can probably still play.
And he doesn't live the healthiest lifestyle, unlike Chad Johnson and T.O. Man, those guys, they're fit.
Chad Johnson still eats McDonald's, he says, man.
But he doesn't drink, he doesn't party, he doesn't do the type of stuff that he still does it. I know. Back to Patrick Willis, just this year we saw Zach Thomas getting into the Hall of Fame. When's Patrick Willis due, man? I mean, Hall of Fame, I think he deserves it, even though he doesn't have that time served.
He was due the first year he was on the ballot, and it's a fucking travesty, honestly, that he's not in. And the thing that I hate, and this isn't just exclusive to football, is there's like a pecking order almost where it's like, well, we know we're going to vote this guy in eventually. Let's vote in some other guys first, or guys who may not be on the ballot for a number of years. Like there's way too much like behind the scenes politics for voting players into the Hall of Fame when it should just be as simple as like Patrick Willis is one of the greatest fucking football players to ever step on an NFL field. That should be the end of the conversation, and he should be in. And the thing that gets me is it's like, no disrespect to Zach Thomas. I watched those Dolphins teams that had him and Jason Taylor. They were a good team. He was a good linebacker. There's no fucking world that exists where Zach Thomas was a better football player than Patrick Willis, right? And that to me is where it's like, it's really hard. And as somebody who, was, in a position where I was NFL media and was in a position to be voting on these awards and stuff, part of the conflict I had was I would spend hours upon hours every week just going back and watching 49ers games and watching coaches film of every snap and, taking notes on players and stuff. And that was just one of the 16 games that's going on in a given week. There's absolutely no fucking way that these people who are voting on these awards can take into consideration every little thing that these guys are doing. And I think that's the hardest part is it's like for a lot of the people that are voting on this in other media markets, I don't blame them for not watching every snap of the 2008 49ers, right? 2009 49ers. Like, why the fuck would you if you didn't have to be? But that's where you get a guy like Patrick Willis, where it's like his greatness. Like he stepped on the field as a rookie and was immediately one of the best players at his position in a time where linebackers were still, I think, were a lot more valued than they are today. So I just think it really comes down to a flaw in the way it's structured, where you're dependent on, like a perfect example, 2021, Robert Quinn is first team All-Pro over Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa had almost 100 pressures. And the reasoning, I'm assuming, for a lot of the people who voted for Robert Quinn was
numbers.
He had 18 sacks, right? And I went back and I watched all of the sacks. I was like, all right, there's no world that Robert Quinn's better than Nick Bosa, but let's see how we got there. They were literally all like coverage sacks, quarterbacks holding the ball too long. Nothing on an individual level where it was like, holy shit, Robert Quinn is, and he's a good football player. Don't get me wrong, Robert Quinn's a very good football player, but there was no world that existed where he was a better football player than Nick Bosa that year. And I think it just comes down to the fact where a lot of these people who are voting, they immediately just saw sack numbers and they're like, oh, okay, he had 18 sacks. Of course he's going to be first team All-Pro. And I think that's where there's this flaw Because I don't know the exact numbers, but I think that was one of the things I heard with Zach Thomas too. Is it was like, oh, he had all these tackles. I'm like, okay, well, fucking tackles don't mean that's like literally your job as a linebacker to rack up tackles. Like just because you got the most tackles didn't mean that you were the best player at your position. It's just one of many factors that need to be weighed. So yeah, I just think I apologize for the rant, but it always upsets me that there's so many talented players in a lot of sports that get screwed over because the structure of voting guys into the Hall of Fame, I think, is super flawed.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Pro Football Reference Hall of Fame monitor right now, and Patrick Willis is number 8 of linebackers of all time. And I'm just looking, Kuechly is at 6. So hopefully both of those guys can get in. But if we're talking numbers, I know Super Bowls kind of set this apart, but Patrick Willis has similar numbers to Dick Butkus, who I'm sure walked in. Dick Butkus had 9 years as a starter. Patrick Willis was 7. Dick Butkus had twice as many interceptions, but Patrick Willis had twice as many sacks. It's like they pretty much balance each other out. But you looking at Zach Thomas is right above Patrick Willis, Brian Urlacher, these guys, Ray Nitschke. It's like Patrick Willis is right there in the mix. Let's put him in.
For sure. Jordan, I'm just curious, what is your favorite or like first memory that like or just like sticks to your sticks in your mind of Patrick Willis?
Um, the first one was probably that I keep coming back to is probably I forget which receiver it was, but that dude he leveled on the Jets. I think
Brad Smith.
Yeah, like that's the one that just stuck with me where it's just like, dude, like he just got like stonewalled. Like it was one of those things where all these guys are freak athletes, but it was one of those plays where I feel like he kind of set himself apart. The interception in Seattle is definitely up there too, off that tip.
That was a good one.
I would definitely say that. It's hard to pick. Those are probably the most prominent ones I would say from right away. And then even just he had a tackle against LSU when he was at Ole Miss near the goal line.
Oh, with the club on his hand?
With the club on his hand, yeah. Where it just
picked up the guy.
I remember watching that on the little loop ESPN was playing when they drafted him, and I'm just like, this guy's a good fucking football player. Like I'm 100% bought in. I'm locked in. But yeah, on the 49ers, I would say it's definitely that Seattle game, and then they hit on Smith against the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the receiver was early Doucette when he was playing against the Cardinals when he ran him down from all the way across the field, and especially behind. And I was like, okay, this guy's already a freak. And seeing him do that, I was like, all right, he can play in today's NFL just because of what he can do right there. And then, yeah, the interception against Seattle, something good to say. And like I said, like I know he's got Vince Young in the background there, and I'm a Texas fan. So when he leveled Ricky Williams, I was like, shit, yeah, Ricky Williams, it's time to hang it up, buddy.
Hang him up, dude. Yeah.
He just fucking leveled him, and that was something good to see for sure.
Jordan, any guys you feel like? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, if you guys like Ricky Williams, I got a picture of
Ricky there you go. Hell yeah. 2 Longhorns up on that wall.
Welcome.
Jordan, are there any players that you feel like for the 49ers that went a little bit under the radar or were underrated?
Like all time or right now?
Yeah, all time.
I mean, there's a few. I thought Ahmad Brooks was a really, really good player on a really, really good defense that didn't get the credit he deserved. Just because
he hates Drew Brees, by the way.
What's that?
He hates Drew Brees, by the way.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, then they got so screwed out of the home field. That just was unfortunate all around. I think he was a guy that definitely didn't get maybe the appreciation he deserved. A guy who will always be one of my favorites is Fred Beasley. I loved Fred Beasley growing up back in an era where fullback still mattered, and they still do for the 49ers, but the rest of the league, it's kind of become an extinct position. I was a big Fred Beasley guy. I think that they had a good couple of years where I thought Walt Harris was a really underrated cornerback when there wasn't too much going on. I thought that they were able to get some good production out of the secondary. Everybody remembers Dre Bly for the fumble after the pick. But I thought he had an unappreciated run as a Niner there for a little bit. But I would say definitely like Ahmad Brooks and Fred Beasley are probably the 2 guys where I'm like they were very pivotal to what they did. but they didn't really get as much shine because, with Beasley, you had Garrison Hurst, who was really good, and T.O. was really good. And then with Ahmad Brooks, it's really hard because you had Willis and you had Aldon Smith and you had Justin Smith, Bowman obviously coming in. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of guys from back in that era where it's like, even if the on the field production wasn't like monumental, they did a lot of little things. I still think Boobie Dixon, the energy he brought on special team, he's a guy that I always appreciated. I loved watching the way he played. Trying to think of some other guys because I think that era really was, as they were transitioning from Singletary to Harbaugh, there was a lot of guys that were pivotal in the culture changing then. Delaney Walker's another guy where he was really, really good. He was a starting tight end for a long time for other teams. He was at his peak, I thought, with the Niners, as good as he was in Tennessee for those years. But yeah, there's a lot of guys that I think just, Arnez Battle, Brandon Lloyd. I remember watching Brandon Lloyd acrobatic catches. That was probably the only exciting
Josh Morgan,
yeah. Josh Morgan's another really good one. There's a lot of guys that Kevin Barlow, just a lot of that I would, when they had those god awful gold jerseys, dude. I don't know if you guys remember those at all. I hated them. I thought they were so bad, dude. Funny time.
Yeah, man. There was a lot of underrated players that I still talk about, like even, Maurice Hicks. I'm like, remember all those guys for sure that were just didn't get a lot of love, but they were fan favorites just because how they played. When you're talking about, Boobie Dixon, I instantly thought about the Tony Montana squad. I was like, man, I really wish that we had that coverage today, or like at least like a Blake Costanzo, Bubba Ventrone, because those guys were just like the old school, like when they used to have wedge, they were the wedge busters that would just go in there and just like, hey man, you're not going to record this concussion tonight, and I'm just going to go, end it. That's great. That type of style was just something that, although he played like that and he wanted to coach like that, he didn't really have that in his players when Singletary was coaching, and then that's something that Harbaugh was able to, bring it out of their players. You know what I mean? And that was something that was always good to see because, like, when he brought in, like you said, some players that weren't really good on other teams when they brought him in. Like Walt Harris wasn't really that great when he was with Washington, but same with actually Carlos Rogers when we brought him in. He wasn't that great when he came in. I was like, damn man, he's getting all this production. What the hell, Then Terrell Brown, we had him on the squad. Shout out to Texas again, but he wasn't doing much, and then he was a starter when Harbaugh came over. And so it was something good to see, man.
Yep. Jordan, we're going to move on to your favorite memory being a Niners fan. It could be a game you attended, a playoff game, a classic comeback, or even just a single play.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, this is the easiest answer probably to any question you'll ask. I was at Candlestick for the divisional game against the Saints, and that is by far the happiest I've ever been watching a football game because the just roller coaster of emotions. It was the first playoff game that I'd really gotten to experience as I was like 16, so I'll say as a young man. They had that comeback against the Giants when I was like 8 or 9, which was cool. I remember watching that comeback. I think that was the 2003 wild card, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But that was like my first real taste of playoff football where I could really have a good sense of what was going on and appreciate the magnitude of the environment, the energy, the atmosphere. And you're going against, Drew Brees and this team that had just won a Super Bowl 2 years ago and this high-powered Saints offense. And I remember just the range of emotions when Alex Smith scored his touchdown. Then there's that big play to Jimmy Graham, and you're like just deflated, like, oh, fuck, like you got to be kidding me. Like, same old Niners. This is all I've known all my life. And then that throw to Vernon Davis, and the seats my dad had were right in that end zone, the south end zone there where he caught it. And I just remember, like, I can still to this day, like, vividly hear the just eruption and the joy and just the pure happiness that was coming from 65,000 people at one moment when that happened. And, it's really funny because I actually was there for the next game as well, the Kyle Williams game. And I always tell people that was one of my favorite 49ers games too. I get a lot of shit for that when I tell them that. but I thought it was a perfect example in a very short window of time of the highest high you can feel as a football fan and the lowest low. And I think feeling that low really made me appreciate the high I had the week before and made me appreciate that, hey, yeah, winning a Super Bowl would be really cool, but take what you can get and enjoy
Yeah.
these moments when they come, because I've had some great, I've been really lucky. I was in Seattle for that Dre Greenlaw game. I flew up last minute, was there for that one.
Oh yeah.
I was at the NFC Championship game. I was at both I've been at every playoff game at Levi's. That Saints game was just so special to me for so many reasons, and it still is just one that I can remember jumping up and down, bear hugging a complete stranger in a way that, just very few things in life can make you embrace a total stranger the way that
Yeah.
that football game did.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the box score right now, 32-36. Man, that Vernon Davis touchdown happened with 9 seconds left on the clock in the fourth quarter. Some guys had some big games in this one. Drew Brees threw for 63 attempts for 462 yards, 4 touchdowns. Marquise Colston caught 12 for 136. Vernon Davis had 7 for 180. What a game.
Yeah, that game was crazy. I mean, it was truly a heavyweight freaking battle, man, just because you had I think it started off with Whitner just leveling Pierre Thomas, which it wouldn't be targeting even today. It was just straight up just knocked him out. Ball came out, we scooped it up. I was just like, damn, this is gonna be, we had got to win this game. We gotta win. That game, I was on the edge of my seat the whole game, like you were saying. It was so back and forth, and that Jimmy Graham play, I was just like, fuck. And then I don't know, man, just seeing Staley run stride for stride with Alex Smith was just so awesome, because I have so much love for Joe Staley. That I love that Joe Staley Patrick Willis duo pick that we had in that first round. So it was always great to see him play and seeing him go stride for stride, get that key block for him to score. And they still to this day make fun of Alex Smith's like celebration and everything. But man, I love that game. That game was truly just instant classic.
Yep. Well, as we know, with the highs comes the lows, like you're saying the following week. Do you have a worst memory being a Niners fan? I know the 2 Super Bowls were pretty recent. You've been to every playoff game at Levi's. Does anything pop out to you?
Yeah, it's funny. So the Kyle Williams game, it sucked. I remember walking out of there. It was brutal, man, because it was right after that. Again, Eli Manning just got pummeled in that game. You're coming off a sack, they're punting. You're like, all right, we're gonna go downfield, kick a field goal, Super Bowl, and you could hear a pin drop in that fucking place. You'll never forget the deafening silence. The 2019 Super Bowl was really rough too, but that Ravens Super Bowl, I remember I was at my buddy's house. I think I was a senior in high school at the time, and I remember walking out on his front porch, sitting there and crying, like I like legit tears, not just like choked up, like, oh man, this, like fucking bawling on his front, because it was like, it was finally going to happen. And there was just something about that Super Bowl, and especially after Frank Gore busted that big run, obviously the whole comeback, all the things before that, but Gore bust that big run, and it's like, oh shit, like it's actually going to happen now. Like, here we go. That was probably the hardest I've ever taken a Niners loss. That one, I can still vividly remember exactly where I was sitting, fucking just waterfall of tears coming out of my face after that game. And I think that's the only time in my life I've ever cried after a 49ers game. And I don't want to, I can't predict the future. I would have a hard time seeing myself getting that emotional over a Niners game anytime soon. So
you're numb.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the only time I ever cried over a Niners game. So I would go with that one.
Yep. Yeah. I remember that one, the Harbaugh versus Harbaugh Bowl. Kaepernick to Crabtree 3 consecutive times in the end zone. That one it was close. And then of course, the blackout game, right? That's when they had the lights went out for a while. Yeah, that was a classic one. Do you remember the Steve Young injury?
I was a little bit young for that. I remember
that one.
But yeah, that was the Monday night in Arizona, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the debut of Jeff Garcia. I remember it. Fuck. I hate this guy, Nick Phillips or Lawrence Phillips.
Mhm.
Misses the block on a blitzing safety, and here comes Arnaz Williams. And I was just like, as soon as I saw him, I remember going, fuck. And bam, he was out cold. And I was like, shit. Like, I never really got to see like prime. I don't remember prime Steve Young. I don't, but I remember just watching him, and he was my favorite 49er.
Mhm.
Because he was a lefty, he was a mobile quarterback that can run. Just seeing this guy do it, and then I was like, all right, cool. I get to see him. Bam, knocked out. And here comes Jeff Garcia. Hearing his story, it's like, all right, Canadian football player, cool, whatever. Bill Walsh discovered him, so he's got to do something, and he played well, played good. The rest is history. But damn, that sucked. That was the end of a legend right there.
Me and G were actually at the game, Cowboys versus Niners, when Navarro Bowman broke his leg. When was that?
No, that was
20.
he tore his Achilles that
Oh,
game.
tore his Achilles. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that? 2017, 18, something like that.
Yeah. That one sucked.
Another brutal one. Yep.
I
I
remember
did.
he he
We
was
didn't see him after that, right? Was
yeah,
that
no,
it?
Zeke was just no, he came back and
But he
then he
was
went
never
to
the
the
same.
Raiders.
Yeah,
But
that was when Zeke was really Zeke.
I
It's like his
remember
second year.
yeah, I remember because Zeke wasn't doing anything at all. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
cool, we just got to keep containing him and we're gonna win this game. And I remember him breaking a long one, and I just see Navarro Bowman just go down. I was like, he didn't get. I was like, that was non-contact, and I just put my hand in my head. I was like, that was non-contact. That's not good. He's down. That's not good whatsoever.
Are you a Cowboys fan, Duran?
Yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan.
I think that I got a lot of shit on I don't know if you know him. I know G knows him, but I was on Jason Aponte's YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking before the season on a show I was on with him, and he asked who I thought the biggest threat to the Niners were. I was like, everybody's gonna say Philly. I'm really not sold on Philly. I think they were kind of they peaked last year. I think it's Dallas,
Yeah.
and I said that emphatically, and I got a lot of shit for it.
You will.
They look like a really good fucking team. So I would not be surprised at all if there's another playoff trilogy between these teams this year, because I think they're the two best teams in the league, to be honest with you. And
If everyone stays healthy, I think it's almost guaranteed. I
Yeah.
mean,
yeah,
defense, as they say, wins championships. I think those might be the two best defenses in the league right now. And man, there's a lot of talk about how stacked the AFC was versus the NFC. And hey,
yeah,
coming out this first week, the AFC teams didn't play like they usually do. A lot of them were putting up some duds. So we'll
yeah,
see. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I'm hoping we get another one, man. There's nothing like seeing those two teams play in the playoffs. It's just like the juice that you feel the week going up to
Yep.
that game. There's nothing like it.
I'll
Yeah.
take
Me
it. We'll
and
get a preview week 5.
yeah, obviously me and Durant we're close. We're cousins, but we're pretty much brothers. Um, we talk every single day, especially Sundays. We're in fantasy leagues together, so we talk every single day. But when it comes to that day, I'll call him like early in the morning, say I love you, but fuck you.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
fuck
I'll
you,
say the same thing.
yeah.
I'll say the same thing to his mom. Shout out to Auntie. And she'll straight up just say, I love you so much, nephew, but fuck you today.
Uh,
I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, cool. It's all love. And at the end of the day, like I won't text them after, I'll wait for them to text me and let them know it's okay. But yeah, it's it's a really good rivalry that's still kind of like rekindling, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Someone's got to lose, but I feel like we're going to get a good preview week 5 here. And
Yep,
hey, that'll just set the tone for the playoffs if we get lucky and both of us are in there without any injury. So
for sure.
we're talking about it right now. Let's talk about some future expectations you have for the Niners.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because like we do the not we the 49ers have 41 and a half, million dollars in cap. And also I'm curious what are they gonna do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think that they need to fix at the moment? Because I have some ideas, but then again, I'm not John Lynch. I'm not the GM. So
I
what's
think
your
most of
opinion?
that money is probably tucked away for Ayuk. I think there's no way they're going to let Ayuk
Hell no.
get out. Yeah, like he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Shout out
I wouldn't
BA.
I wouldn't count on any other big moves until that's squared away, because I think that's the reason why they did it. Um, I mean, you can always get better. I'll be honest. I think that they could stand to get better at corner still. Like, and that's no knock on Demo at all. Like, I think he's been fine, but
I think it's more Isaiah Oliver because
well,
they
slot
kicked him
corners.
inside, right? And outside again. Maybe
It's
Ambry
really
Thomas.
it's really hard to find a good slot corner that's going to stay and be a slot corner for years. Like, I think that they got really spoiled with K1 for the years he was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say probably like the secondary. Everybody talks about McKivitz, but I offensive line, I think that you can scheme around that kind of stuff. Whereas if you have a weak link in your secondary at all, I think that's something that can be picked on a little bit more. But it's hard to. There's very few rosters, not just now, that I've ever seen that have as few holes as the Niners do right now. So I would say probably like the secondary is probably the biggest thing to me, where I'm like, if you look, it's a really good team with a good quarterback and a good, offensive mind that's dialing up plays. There's things that can be attacked there that would leave me a little bit concerned. But yeah, I would say that. And then, figuring out the right tackle spot is going to be really important. And how long is Trent Williams going to play for? I hope forever. But finding a way to have some sort of long-term solution for when he inevitably retires is another one.
He wants that Super Bowl. He's chasing it.
Maybe,
He's chasing it. But hey, if he gets it, that might be it.
if we can use that 41 to get a time machine to bring back all those guys from Tony Montana squad, that'd be amazing. Because the kick return coverage just fuck, man. Like Anthony McFarland, he was like one block away from springing it. And I was like, dude, you gotta stop. Like kick it out of the end zone at least, man. But yeah, but I feel you on the Trent Williams ones. Trent Williams one, like I have his jersey. I had to get it custom made because they don't make jerseys for linemen. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, man. I'd love to have him play forever. Because I remember when we first got him, like the very next day he was in the gym and he was doing box squats with weights. I'm like, you're 300 plus pounds and you're doing box hops with 40-pound dumbbells. What the fuck?
I just learned this week, right before he made that signing with the Niners, it was between Niners and Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah, for his extension.
He could have went on a roll there too. And Patrick Mahomes would have loved to have him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Are there any no, I'll skip that one.
Go ahead, say it.
No, I kind of already asked if there's any underrated players that haven't been paid yet who's coming up. He mentioned he's not underrated, but Ayuk should be coming up here next. I think all your main guys are paid. Like who?
Yeah, there's nobody like really under the radar that I'd be losing sleep over. They can replace a lot of the league average talent they'll probably end up losing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think everyone that's important is pretty much paid or they're already under like Purdy. I mean, he's going to be under contract already. I don't think you can pay him. You have to wait for that rookie contract.
Yeah.
The next one, the 49ers coaches are the hottest commodity in the coaches market. Do you think there's anyone on the team right now that's next in that pipeline?
That's a good question because I think a lot of these guys, like a Brian Greasy, right? Like I think he's come in and he's done a really good job at just figuring out whatever was wrong with the quarterbacks, and it was not just Brock, but Jimmy looked as good as he's ever looked under him. Too. But like I don't know if he wants to be a head coach. He would be the first guy where if I'm looking at, because if we're talking about like head coaching commodity, I don't think there's many guys, because like I think that like some of the like lower level assistants they have could get bumped up to like OC roles, maybe things like that. But I mean, track record says otherwise, but I think that they're safe for at least a couple of years now after McDaniel, D'Amico, Saleh, and all these guys got their jobs.
Yep. I see Greasy on here right now, but before the interview started, I looked it up and I noticed that there's 2 Kubiaks on the coaching staff, Clay and Clint. So one's assistant quarterback and one's passing game coordinator.
Those are the ones that I had in mind when I was in an OC role or something like that. But I'd be surprised if they got a head coaching job directly from what they're doing now.
Yep. And one of the smartest things that I think Shanahan does is he has the assistant head coach, Anthony Lynn. I love when the assistant head coach is a former head coach and can kind of plan the day-to-day stuff that, head coaches don't really want to deal with, especially when they're calling plays and coming up with the offensive scheme every week. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a home run pick right there.
Yeah. The only guy I'm worried about losing, I mean, I'm worried about losing the DC every single year. I mean, Wilkes, he should have got the Carolina Panthers job, honestly. But
I think
we'll
he's
see.
had a chance. That's one of those things where
Yeah, but it was underneath Arizona where that
I
whole
know.
franchise is like even getting like it's all shitty. Like he just did a testimony where it's like, man, we had to use burner phones.
Yep. But I'm saying if D'Amico or McDaniel or someone already went somewhere and failed and then came
Yeah.
back, I feel like, that's kind of, I these young guys coming up getting their first shot underneath I don't think I've ever seen it. What is 3 head coaches
Mhm.
under? It's like in 2 or 3 years. It's like,
Mhm.
come
Yeah.
on now. That's a those are valuable pieces to lose, but it just seems like the next guy's always stepping up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bill Walsh said it best. If you have a good team, you're gonna lose good coaches.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
Gee, anything else for future expectations?
Um, so what's your prediction for the it's Rams week right now when we're talking on Wednesday. What's your prediction for that? It's always a fucking fist fight with those guys,
They
and I love
Yeah.
surprised
it.
me last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I divisional games, I always just assume we're going to be close until otherwise. I think Stafford looks really good. He doesn't look like he has the elbow issues he was dealing with last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a home game, but it's a road game. Like if we're being serious, it's a road
Mm-hmm.
game, but it feels like a home game. I think it'll be close, but I think the Niners are going to win. I think it'll be a pretty convincing win, but it won't be just right out the gate the way it was in Pittsburgh. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think the Niners are going to expose that offensive line. I don't think the offensive line can hold up much against them. I think
Yeah.
last week, I mean,
And Bosa's not even in playing shape because like everyone's bringing up how he got pancaked, against
did
Washington,
he?
pancaked them. But like, man, he was huffing and puffing like right before, and he was like on a knee like right before, and he's never really on a knee like before the play starts. So I was like, oh shit, like he's tired. Get him out. You know what I mean? Just because like let him rest. But
Mhm.
he also needs that conditioning, so I get why they kept him in.
Yep. Yep. That's it for me, G. Got anything
Yeah.
else?
No, that's it for me too. Jordan, I just want to say thank you for coming on so much. We very much appreciate it. If you can let everybody know again where they can find you and what you're working on, that'd be awesome. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. NBC Sports Bay Area. If you're a 49ers fan, we do extensive 49ers coverage. There's, obviously Matt Mayoko is the godfather of 49ers media. It feels like this guy has just been at the top of his game for over 25 years now, covering the team. So Matt is definitely fantastic. Jennifer Lee Chan is incredible at what she does as well. They're on site at the games, practices. So there's a lot of great content coming from the both of them. And then the digital team as well. Every day, I can promise you throughout the course of the season, there's some kind of news analysis and things that we'll be able to provide. Video highlights, press conference sound, video, and things like that. And then I'm no longer there anymore, but I will always have a special place in my heart for Niners Nation. And there's some great, great content there as well. So I would definitely recommend as a 49ers fan, check that out. There's some great writers there who do a really good job keeping up with the team day to day.
Yeah,
Shout
we'll
out.
put all the links below. Go ahead and follow Jordan and his team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing I got to say about Matt Mayoko, when I was in elementary school, I used to read his articles in
Mhm.
for Press Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 35 years old, so that's how long he's been in the game. Like you said, he is a godfather. When he comes to the Cooperage event that Candlesticks Chronicles does, I always be sure to buy him a beer. He probably doesn't remember me, but it's much respect for that guy. I love that guy so much.
He's put in enough time. He deserves a free
Oh
beer.
yeah. I'll buy that man a beer every time I see him. And I saw him at Russian River once and I was like, I'm gonna get that guy a beer. But so that's what's up. But yeah, Jordan, we'll put your links below. Thank you so much for coming on. You can follow us, like, subscribe, share with everybody else on YouTube and also on Twitter. Duran, anything else to say we sign off?
Good luck this week or this year, except for week 5.
we'll, we'll see the Cowboys week 5. Everybody else, thanks for being a fan. Keep enjoying it.
Catch
Later.
you later.